Jack Canfield.
Thank you very much. All right, go ahead and sit down, sit down, sit down. Thank you. That's fabulous. I used to be in a folk singing group in high school and always wanted to be a rock star, and today it feels like that, you know, one of those outdoor rock places. I want to say a couple of things. Harv's introduction was wonderful. I appreciate all I'm not going to do a lot of processes with you today. I am going to share some ideas with you and some insights and some of my own personal story. Hopefully it will inspire you. Some of the tools I'll share with you may be new, may be empowering. It's kind of like coming to a place where everyone's done 100,000 workshops already, but I think I can share some new ideas with you. I want to share a chicken soup story with you. There was a story that was sent in by Norman Cousins, and Norman was the editor of Saturday Review magazine, and he coined the term psychoneuroimmunology. Your psyche, your attitude affects your neurosystem, affects your immune system. We know the more positive you are, the more optimistic you are, the higher your attitude is in terms of positive expectation and joy, the less ill you get, and then if you do get ill, you get better quicker. And he sent in this story called The Wee Nurse. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have been in the hospital overnight? Can I see a show of hands? Have you ever had a wee nurse? A wee nurse comes in the morning and says, "Did we sleep okay last night? We didn't eat all our breakfast today, did we?" And a favorite one that he hated was she'd come in and say, "We haven't had our bowel movement yet today, have we?" And this "we" thing irritated him, and one day he decided he wanted to get back at her. So she came in and she had a little plastic cup. She said, "We need a urine sample." And he said, "Okay, if you'll leave the room, we'll make one." So she left and went out in the hall. And he looked over on his breakfast tray, and there was a glass of apple juice, which he had not yet drunk. He took the apple juice, poured it into the specimen cup, rang the little buzzer. She came back in. He handed it to her. She looked at it and said, "My, we're a little cloudy today, aren't we?" He said, "Here, give it back." And he grabbed it back from her, took the cap off, and then proceeded to drink the whole thing down and said, "Let me run it through again for you. I'll see if I can make it come out clearer this time." Now, I was over in Bangkok. How many of you have been to Bangkok, Thailand? How many of you have seen the Golden Buddha? It's one of the 3 tourist attractions. You always see the Jade Buddha, the Golden Buddha, and the reclining Buddha, and that kind of thing. And this Buddha is 10.5 feet tall of solid gold. The gold value alone is about $196 million. That doesn't even count the artistic and the historical value. And when my wife was taking that picture, I was over next to I'd say about 5 feet away. There was a big glass case. And in that case, there was a piece of clay about 1 foot wide, 2 feet tall, 2 feet thick. And it said that in 1953, they did not know there was such a thing as a golden Buddha. They were moving this large clay Buddha from one side of Bangkok to the other to make room for a road that was coming through. And as they picked up the Buddha with the crane, because it was very heavy, a big crack went down through it. And as the crack went down through it, the head monk got scared and he lowered the Buddha down. And he said, "You know, we better take a look at it and see if we've done any damage to it." And it started to rain, so they put a canvas over it to keep it dry. That night, the monk came out and he shined a flashlight in to see if it was staying dry, and something reflected back from inside the crack. He said, "Clay does not reflect light. There must be something else in there." And so the next morning, they chipped away in behind where they wouldn't see it if they made a mistake, and lo and behold, sure enough, was this golden Buddha. And their best theory is that 300 years earlier, when the Burmese were attacking Thailand, the monks of this monastery covered up the golden Buddha with clay to make it look worthless so they wouldn't steal it. They also think all the monks were killed in a massacre and the secret died with the monks. And then they rediscovered it. The word discover means what? Take the cover off of, discover something. It was always in there, but they took the cover off. I was having dinner with my wife that night, and she said, you know, Jack, that Buddha is like all the people in our seminars. They come in with this cover of clay of their negative beliefs, their self-doubt, their sense of guilt and shame, their beliefs that they're not enough, that they're not worthy, they don't deserve. And what we really do is we take the clay off so this golden essence can come and be there as who they are again, their true identity. It's not like we put anything in, it's just that we remove the things that are not there. I think Barbara talked a little about that earlier today. So as we go through this next hour and a half, think about and hold that metaphor, that image of the Buddha, and it could be the golden Christ, the golden Buddha, the Atman, the source, whatever you want to call it, but that's who you really are. And although we do a lot of things of giving you more information and tools and all of that, really if you were to stop doing the stuff that's negative, as Harv said, you've been defined. When you came in, you were just fine. And what we did was we layered on all that stuff. If we could just start to remove that and realize that everything you need is in you now. You have everything you need to do everything you want to do. It's just that we learn not to trust that. So we'll hold that as a metaphor. Now, you heard this morning, I was listening, I've got one of these great rooms right over here where I could sit in my room and listen to what was going on down here. And whoever was introducing in the morning said that you know about this combination lock idea. And I think you had, what is it, 10, 24/7? Yeah. And think about that model. I was eating dinner with a guy who's the Alabama State chess champion. We were talking about success. And he said, if you know the combination to the lock, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, young or old, male or female, if your IQ is 150 or your IQ is 50. If you know the combination, the lock has to open. And what I've discovered in my work, and I've been doing this work for 30 years. I started with a man named W. Clement Stone, who was worth $600 million back in 1968. And he taught me everything he knew about success, and I've been applying it to my own life and teaching it to others. And then I've done hundreds and hundreds of workshops where I've been the student and gone to India and studied with masters and so on over the years. But there is a combination. There is a system. If you know the combination, you can unlock success. The problem is many of us are missing a few of the numbers. And so what I'd like to do today is just kind of remind us and maybe share some of the new things that you might have forgotten. Now here's a man named J. Paul Getty. He was at once the richest man in America. And when they asked him what were the secrets of success, he said there are three. It's very simple. He said get up early, work hard, and find oil. Not that complicated. So obviously it's a little more tricky than that. At Keller Williams, they have a formula or a system. It's a real estate sales company. They said if you'll make 5 in-person sales calls and 10 over-the-phone calls every day, write 15 thank you notes to the 15 people you talk to, and view 5 new properties, that system always produces a high success rate in this company. So it's a system. It's a formula. Again, 5, 10, 15, 5. Again, this morning, 10, 24/7 that you've learned in Peak Potentials. So there are some formulas. Now, when I studied this, I came up with 64 universal principles that I've studied over the last 36 years. I don't expect to share all those with you today. Maybe we'll get through 9 if we're lucky. But this is a book I wrote called The Success Principles. It's now in 17 languages. You can see a couple of them up there. The one on the far left is in Russian. I was just speaking in Cannes last week in France to 6,500 women from Russia, the Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. I found out my name over there is Giek. Literally, we'd come out of the hotel and there'd be 500 women going, Giek, Giek, photo, Giek, autograph, Giek. And all of a sudden, I was really glad I'm not Brad Pitt because you couldn't move. But anyway, this book has really taken Russia by storm. And there was one man stood up and he said, you know, I bought 100 copies of your book and gave them to everyone in my village, and our village has totally changed. We've changed how we're governing ourselves. We've changed how we're doing business. So we know these principles work universally. They're not just American principles. And I'll also share a little bit of some of the new ideas that I have about the law of attraction that has to come out of the secret. There's some things I think that are missing in that movie. things we said, but that got edited out that I think are useful to touch on. So that's where we'll be going today. Now, would you rather take the short route or the long route to success? Very good. Me too. Wouldn't it make sense to just go straight for the cheese and not get caught in the maze? So I've devoted my life to go further and faster with less effort. My next book is called Effortless Success. Alan Cohen, who talked to you yesterday, has a book. I just bought it in the airport, didn't even know it was out yesterday, read it halfway here to Denver yesterday before I came to Amsterdam, called Relax into Wealth. And so what we're all seeing now is it doesn't have to be as hard as most of us had made it. So we'll talk about how we can make it a little easier. Now, the promise I make, if you do the things I teach you, you can learn to double your income and double your time off and create more balance and fun in your life. And all of my students who work with me do that in 2 years or less. So it's easy to do if you put in the time and you make the commitment to do the work. Now, in my own life, as Mark shared with you this morning, we've sold over 110 million copies of our books that are in 47 languages right now. And this is little Marky Hansen that came from Waukegan, Illinois, and little Jackie Canfield who grew up in West Virginia. And when I grew up in West Virginia, we were the 48th worst state in terms of education in the country, and that's when there wasn't Alaska and Hawaii as states, so we were the bottom. I had a dysfunctional family. My mother was an alcoholic. My father was a workaholic and somewhat abusive. She divorced him when I was 6, to save the kids from getting beat up. And so if I can do it, you can do it. I graduated from the half of the class in my college that made the top half possible. So just want you to understand, it's not about brain power, but it's about how you use your brain to do the work. Okay. Mark and I also have a Guinness Book of World Records. You probably know that. We have 7 books on the New York Times bestseller list on one day. And I share with you not to impress you about me, but to impress upon you if a little kid from West Virginia who got a C in composition in college can go on and become a best-selling author, anybody in this area here can do anything as well. There's a check written to me for $1,130,328.35. Publisher wrote that was the first check he ever wrote for $1 million. He put a smiley face in his signature. Mark and I got 4 of those checks that year. Our combined income each that year was over $6 million. Again, if I can do it, you can do it. Jim Rohn, great motivational speaker, says you can't hire other people to do your push-ups for you. Think about that. I can't hire anyone here to go to Gold's Gym and work out for me. You can't do my meditation for me. You can't do my visualization for me. All the things that I'm going to share with you are things you cannot delegate to others. This is the work. Harv said, there's work to do. You have to work on yourself. When I speak at the National Speakers Association, and people say, I want to be a speaker like you. I want to go out and make all money and affect the world and change people. What advice would you give me? And I said, the first thing is work on yourself. When I first learned about personal growth, I took 38 weekend workshops in 1 year. The only weekends I wasn't taking workshops was when there weren't any. Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas, etc. Spent $17,000 out of my $38,000 income taking workshops back when they were like $100 for a weekend. But the point is, it's that level of work on yourself that opens up and takes off the clay and allows your natural genius to come forward. Buckminster Fuller, who Mark Victor Hansen talked about, said there's no such thing as a genius. He said some children are just damaged less. It means there's less clay on the golden Buddha or the golden Christ that lives inside of each of them. Now, the first principle, if you're taking notes, this would be a good place to start. And if you're not taking notes, this would also be a good place to start. And that is to take 100% responsibility for your life and your results. Now, most of you have heard that before, but I would ask you a question. Have you ever blamed anyone for anything in the last year? We get mad perhaps at the president or the economy or the oil prices, or we blame other people for our not being successful. You literally have to give up all blaming and take 100% responsibility for your life, that you're creating it the way it is. You have to give up complaining. Complaining means I have a reference point for something I prefer that I'm not willing to risk creating. If I was complaining about my wife, it would mean that I have to have a reference point of someone better out there that I would rather be with, that I'm not willing to risk leaving my wife to go be with. Or I'd have to risk working with my wife and sharing with her there were things I didn't like about her that I would want her to change, and that might create a conversation that might be a little bit uncomfortable. But without taking that risk, I can't create what I want.